Another wrestling podcast is excited to welcome our guest today. He's an author, a former world champion, and currently he's getting set for his debut with Global Force Wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome Nick Magnus Aldis. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first off, we have to congratulate you on becoming a father not too long ago. How are you enjoying fatherhood?
You. It's really great. Anyone. It's one of those things, and the cliche thing. Everyone who, it's one of those things that everyone says, but it really is true. If you have a child, then you completely understand. And if you don't, you probably don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But all I can say for me is that it completely gave me a whole new sort of hustle and a whole new sense of calm and purpose. It didn't, it's funny because I thought that I would probably become more neurotic about things like money and things like that, because of having someone to provide for. But actually, in a weird way, it gave me a bit more purpose in terms of saying, you know what, like I'm going to trust my gut and I'm going to do this or do that, and I'm, going to try and do everything I can to provide as much as I can. So it gave me my hustle back.
Sure, yeah. Now, is there any chance, we'll see him training to follow you in your footsteps one day? I know it's kind of early, but
Yeah, well, it's a lot of people have been asking us that and saying like, he's got great genetics, and he's gonna like his. But for us, honestly, we both have the same opinion. Whereas we're not going to discourage him from it, but at the same time, we're not going to force him to do anything he doesn't want to do.
Sure.
All I cared about was that he came out healthy and happy, and he's an awesome kid. So he's I'm sure I can't help but feel at some point or other he's going to interact with the business on some level, because by the time he's walking and talking, like, I'm still very much going to be active in the business. I'm sure of that. So it's he's definitely going to be exposed to it. So I mean, who knows?
All right.
Now, it's pretty obvious, judging by your accent, that you aren't from around here originally. Can you talk to us about your journey from England to the United States? How did that happen?
Sure. Well, I broke in the wrestling business in, I think, 2005 or 2006. I think 2005, with the Knight family, who are more well-known now based on the fact that their youngest daughter, Paige, in WWE, has obviously had the incredible success and is having the incredible success that she's having. And there's a great example of someone who has been exposed to the business since they were born. And it's obviously showing through in her instinct and her talent. I broke in with her parents, Ricky Knight and Julia, otherwise known as Soraya Knight, and they were based in Norwich, which is about 45 minutes from where I grew up. Started going to their camps, and then they ran a lot of shows. They would run as often as they could as far as the training school and stuff is concerned. I think they have a more permanent school now, but back then they would sort of run long, intensive weekend camps whenever they could. So I soaked up as much of it as I could, and then I started going to another school just outside of London called Dropkicks, because it ran every single week. And Wade Barrett trained there, and Marty Skirl, who's doing really great on the Indies now in the UK, and a lot of other guys sort of came through here and there. Doug Williams would come and be a guest trainer. Johnny Storm would come and be a guest trainer. And it was actually there that Doug, went on one of his trips there as like a guest trainer, kind of worked with me a little bit in my very, very early days as a trainee, and then actually helped me get booked for a couple of promoters. So sort of said, this kid's got something, and he can, he's got a good grasp of the sort of old school sort of British fundamentals and stuff like that. And I actually had my first ever singles match, I believe, I'd been in a few like tags, 6-man tags, and royals and stuff for Ricky Knight to sort of break me in gently. But my first actual singles match was actually with Doug Williams, which was funny because it was in a traditional British rounds match. It was like 5-minute rounds and 2 out of 3 falls, stuff like that. And that really helped me on the independent scene in England, because I sort of off the back of that got booked. Started getting booked a few more places, and then eventually I got the word. Everyone in England was sort of trying to work for Brian Dixon because he had so many shows. He had all the Butlins shows, and he was also running a lot of live events, and very well attended. He was a very good promoter. So I basically one day just picked up the phone at 18 years old and called him, which seems so bizarre now to do, but I just called him on the phone, and he just answered, and because that's what all the guys had told me to do. They just said, just call him and just tell him that, tell him who you are, and tell him that tell him that you're 6'4", and that, you got a decent look, and you can, you're not completely terrible, although I wasn't far off that. And you'll get booked. And sure enough, he was like, okay, when can you start? And then after that, I wrestled more or less like full time, like about 6 days a week, most of the time for Brian for about a year there. And then off the back of that, somewhere along the line, I got cast for this little acting part. I forget exactly how that came about, but a casting guy or someone came to one of the Butlin shows, saw me, and then they offered me this little acting part, which paid like a couple of grand, which to me at the time was like a huge amount of money. And then he also happened to have a little agency that did like sort of predominantly stunt guys and that sort of thing. But he just said, well, maybe if, every now and then these things come up, these casting calls come up for like wrestlers or stuff like that, and then a few months later is when they announced they were bringing back Gladiators, American Gladiators, the British version, to TV. And he got me an audition, and I got the part. And then obviously it gave me a huge amount of exposure, and some money in my pocket, and a big public profile. And that caught the attention of Dixie and TNA, and then they offered me a contract, and I came up to the States.
Nice. Now, Nick, I've never moved to another country, so I can't, answer this question, but did you ever experience any big challenges from moving from, England to the USA? Was there anything, that comes to mind that was just, I don't know, maybe a challenge for living in another country?
Well, I will say this. I mean, the big issue for most people coming to America, the Brits especially, stuff like that, is doing all the visa stuff, all the visa paperwork, and going to the embassy, and the interview and all that sort of stuff. I've been through that, about 4 or 5 times. A couple of times to renew, and then a couple of times because I've lost my passport, or had to, or passport expires. If you get your passport, then you have to get a new page, and every time you have to go through all the same thing again. But I will say this: for whatever reason, TNA, their legal department, or Panda Energy, or whoever it was who was handling it, they always seemed to do a very, very good job of that, and made it as easy as possible for me. I really, considering that a lot of the WWE guys that I knew told me these horror stories of how difficult it was, or how what a sort of what a ball ache the whole process was. I always had a relatively easy time, I have to say. It was always pretty straightforward, a lot of waiting, and a lot of sort of bureaucracy. Like, you have to make sure all the forms and everything are good. And, the embassy in London is pretty bizarre. Like, I don't know whether it's just from the sort of after 9/11 or what, but like the embassy is like, the security protocol is just bizarre. Like, they make you all stand outside, like regardless rain or shine, you have to stand outside and wait until they let you in. Like, and wow. So like, I've been there before and just been like, either like, sweating buckets in the summer, or just like, soaked, like, because it's been like pouring rain. But other than that, like, it's pretty plain sailing. As far as like the actual sort of physical move, I literally came to the United States with like a bunch of clothes in my bags. That was it. I had to sort of buy everything from scratch. I came over and basically stayed in like one of those sort of extended stay sort of hotels, like a but not a very nice one, like a crappy Travelodge in Clearwater, I think.
Sure.
And then while I looked around for an apartment, and then I will say the toughest thing for me for early on when I first came over was that I was like 22, and even though I actually had built up a decent credit score in the UK, it didn't mean anything in the US. Like they basically went, well, you don't have a credit score, and I'd be like, well, I do have one in England. That doesn't matter, doesn't count. So, getting things like you have to show them your visa and your contract and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, ultimately, like it was all pretty, like these are small problems in the grand scheme of things compared to what some people have to go through.
Sure.
So I can't really complain about anything like that. It's and I love America. Like I always dreamed of coming to America. I know it's like a very cliche thing to say, but I always did. So I was just so. And for me, you have to remember that my first sort of year or so with TNA, I was still living in the UK. They were flying me in and out for TVs and all that, which is unbelievable to think of now. I can't believe sometimes that I did that schedule, like all those flights all the time, those long flights. And because I was doing all the house shows and all the TVs and going back and forth, but I had still had commitments in the UK, so there wasn't really any discussion about it. And then one day, I sort of said to Terry Taylor and said, you guys must have spent. I worked out in my head quickly and said I worked out that they basically spent as much on flying me as they had on paying me. And I was just like, is there some way we can split the difference and you just give it all to me if I move here? And that was pretty much how I negotiated my first guaranteed contract. Was I basically said, like, you spent X amount on like paying me this per show and all these flights, so why don't you guarantee to pay me X amount and I'll move to Florida? And they were like, that sounds like a good deal. So that was pretty much how it worked out the first time.
Nice.
That's awesome. Now, you mentioned it earlier. English wrestling kind of differs from what we're accustomed to here in the United States. Who are some of your favorite English wrestlers that you've had the chance to maybe see or even work with?
Well, to see it wasn't. I didn't really get a chance to see that many live because, really, by the time I broke into the business, the scene was very much like either sort of very American style shows because that's what the audience wanted because they'd seen American wrestling for so long on TV, or just because it changed. That sort of traditional wrestling presentation had kind of disappeared from England, although it still had a bit of a resurgence. But now, like, the indie scene in the UK is thriving. It's as good as it's ever been. Some incredible stuff going on there now. But when I started going to Dropkicks, there was a very, very heavy influence of the World of Sport era of wrestling. A lot of the trainers there, like Tony Scarlo and guys like that, were very much about, they were all from that era, and they were very much, a lot of the guest trainers were guys in that era. Even Nick Magnus, who was a huge star in the UK back in the 70s and 80s, he actually even came in one day, which was a pretty big deal to a lot of us, who had sort of, because, if you talk to someone like my dad, I mentioned wrestling, like that'll be one of the first names he says. Oh, I used to watch Mick McManus and Jackie Pallo and Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy and stuff. But after I went back and then I really started studying it, and then my favorites from that era, probably the first guy that comes to mind is Mark Rollable Rocco. He was actually the original Black Tiger in Japan. Just a brilliant athletic wrestler, just a real, like, he was the guy who was able to take that neat kind of very sort of compact British wrestling style of like chain wrestling and holds and counter holds and things like that, and then incorporate like this high impact, like fast moving sort of battering ram kind of stuff, like, big, like, heavy blows and stuff like that. Dynamite Kid obviously was the biggest innovator of transitioning that into, like the gymnastic stuff into like really, really good quality wrestling and high impact sort of believable stuff. There's a guy called Steve Wright, who is Alex Wright's father. He's an incredible wrestler. He did a lot in Japan. There's some stuff that if you go and look up some of his stuff in Japan, it's really great. Marty Jones. A lot of people talk about Johnny Saint. Like his knowledge of holds and counter hold stuff is ridiculous, and he had really great conditioning, and obviously. But for me, I was always a bigger fan of a guy called Steve Gray, who doesn't get as much of the recognition as Johnny Saint does. But Steve Gray was like just brilliant at all of the account holds up, but he was also a really good babyface. He was really good at selling, and had really sort of had a really there's lots of Boy Collins, Finley. Those are some incredible matches that stand the test of time even to this day. So he was a great guy from England.
Sure.
Well, the internet and wrestling community was a buzz lately. Talks of you joining Global Force Wrestling. Are you excited about this new opportunity?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't on board, because obviously I'm taking a risk. But Jeff Jarrett has always been a guy who looked out for me and went to bat for me, believed in me before a lot of other people did, and saw more for me down the road, and understood that I, got the, was a really a student of the game and really wanted to be more than I was. Gave me a great opportunity to showcase that in India, gave me more responsibilities, helped me really grow as a performer, and then it coincided, with him starting Global, kind of coincided with me feeling like I had maxed out at TNA, like I'd maxed out my earning potential, and I'd maxed out my creative potential. Like I'd done everything I could do, worked with everybody I could work with. There was no one left I wanted to work with, and I maxed out my earning potential. That was really the long and short of it. Was that I knew that, like, if I stayed there any longer, I was just going to be running in place. Like I'd done everything I could do, and it was time for me to. I wanted to see my contract through. I'd always made that promise that, when I signed that last contract a couple of years ago, I said, I'll see this through, because I like to stay to my word, but then I'm out of here.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Now, with Global Force Wrestling, the roster's, pretty much taking shape right now. Is there anybody out there that you're hoping to get a chance to work with, maybe that you haven't yet?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the great things about Global already, is I've already got to work with some new people with some really good talent that I haven't really seen a lot of, or heard about and never had a chance to work with. I've already done some live events for Global. I started a couple of weeks ago on the Loop in up in the Midwest. And I worked with Tommaso Ciampa one night, and I worked with Congo Kong on the other two nights. I enjoyed both. The two guys I've worked with who are both very, very good. So, and for me, I think out of everybody that's on the roster at the moment, the guy I'm looking forward to working with is PJ Black at some point. I think I'd love to wrestle him. I think that I really enjoy working with those kind of wrestlers, because I always like being the cat in the cat and mouse. You know what I mean? And those are my favorite kind of matches to have, and I think I could have a really good one like that with PJ.
Awesome. Now, you've been doing a lot of media lately and talking about Global Force Wrestling, but also your newest project, which is the Superstar Body book. What made you decide to write this book, and can you tell us a little bit about it? Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you. Well, really, it was just one of those things where I would get frequently, I would be asked at meet and greets or through my website, fan mail or Twitter or whatever. People would, I would get this sort of like, what can I do to get in better shape? Like, how do you get in shape? Like, how do you train? Like, what do you eat? What supplements do you take? And, it was always in the back of my mind, because I just love health and fitness. Like, that's my other big passion in life besides from wrestling, and I developed the passion for fitness, and bodybuilding and everything like that, because of my desire to look better for pro wrestling, because I was such a skinny kid. I didn't have a very positive body image. So I always, and I realized that a lot of magazines, are just a magazine full of commercials, and a lot of books can become very, very wordy and very sort of, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of books are very kind of, I don't mean like arrogant, but some of them are very much like, this is my fail-proof system, and like, this is how you do it, like, follow this exact program to the letter, eat exactly this, like, follow this, because like, they think that's what, and I don't think that that's the right approach. I've always believed that give a man a fish and he can feed himself for a day, but, give him the means to catch his own fish and he can feed himself for a lifetime. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what the premise of the book is. It's like, cutting through all the crap. Here's the fundamental 411 of what you need to know. Like, and it's a lot of it's like practical stuff, like, how to choose the right gym. Like, if there are a lot of different gyms in your area, like some people don't have that, are afforded that choice. But if you live in America, chances are you probably are. So it's like, choosing the right gym and how to do all these, the thing like supplements, like the supplement industry is a $1 billion industry. And so much of the stuff in a lot of supplements is just crap. It's just filler, there are little things in there like, look, these are the fundamental things of like that go into all of them. You can buy them separately, and here's how you can do it on a budget. And just things like that. And it's really just like the basics, not just the basics, but it's just like the 411 of like, all right, look, if you want to get bigger, this is what you need to do. If you want to get leaner, this is what you need to do. Like, and it's pretty cut and dry. There's a lot of things in there that go against, a lot of the typical stuff that's pumped out there by mass media, because they would have an agenda to sort of sell you something, whereas this is more like, this is the reality of it. You don't have to live like a monk. You don't have to eat plain chicken breast, every 2 hours, blah, 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 like this and that. You don't have to live like that. You can enjoy, eggs and bacon. You can do this and that. It's just ways and means of how to manipulate your body to adapt. Plus, I think the other thing about the book that I always wanted to do and I'm really proud of is the fact that I basically said, look, you shouldn't ever take one person's advice. Don't just take my word for it, okay? Like, don't just blindly believe everything I tell you. Here's Rob Terry. Like, look at him. Here's his take on, like, how to supplement, like what he does. Here's Kurt Angle, the greatest wrestler ever lived, an unbelievable athlete, one of the greatest athletes the world has ever seen. Here's what he does as far as mental visualization. Here's his prep, here's his like take on how he's been able to keep himself at such a high level. Girls, you want to know why Brooke has such a, has that famous, butt and legs? Like, here's a workout routine. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And there's all sorts of great guys like that. There's a friend of mine, Nick, who's a world-class trainer in Baltimore, who's worked with like NBA players and NFL players and stuff like that. Like, he's written a really great piece. The CEO of Natural Stack Supplements has written a great piece. There's all kinds of different people. It's called Superstar Spotlight, where there's all sorts of different people who have interjected their stuff. So you're really not just getting my advice. You're getting advice from all the people that I've interacted with, had the privilege to get advice from through the years, and now it's all together in one book.
That's great.
Now, where can people find this book? Is it online or is it in the stores?
Yeah, it's available on all the major, basically all the major sort of book outlets: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Book Depository. You can download it to all the major e-readers. Paperbacks available. I think hard copies on pre-order. I think you can get maybe hard copy from the UK if you want to pay the shipping if you're in the US. But to get all the different options, I mean, you can pretty much, if you just search the Superstar Body, it will come up. But if you want to get all the different ways you can get it, it's all at the website for it is superstarbodybook.com, or one word, superstarbodybook.com.
All right. Now, Nick, other than wrestling, you have some acting credits to your name, too. Do you have any new projects in the works that you could tell us about, or maybe, something in the future that you'll be working on?
No, not right now. It's funny, like, a lot of the acting stuff I've had really just come up by chance. I have an agent in Los Angeles, and I have one in London, and my London agent recently has been coming through quite a lot of stuff, and she's, but it's the same as anything, you audition and you see what happens. Right now, there's nothing I can think of that's booked, but I'm always keeping it on the back burner. It's not something I really go out of my way to actively pursue. I will say this: I did get submitted for that part in the Bond movie that Batista got. I was very upset.
Oh.
Just kidding.
Now we have to ask you real quick. I know you're a very busy person, but we find ourselves asking all of our guests this a lot. But what are you looking most forward to in the future, whether it be through wrestling or just life in general? What are some of your goals in the future?
Well, what I'm looking forward to right now is being part of something, from the on the ground floor, but like global. Jeff is affording me some opportunities to for stuff like global outside of wrestling. In the sense of giving me some more responsibilities, which is good for me because I have a real sort of entrepreneurial drive, that I want to try and exercise a little bit, and I'll be sort of doing some more of that stuff. And thanks to my time at TNA, I've been able to build up a little bit of capital to be able to maybe look into some more stuff. So that's right now. It's like I'm very excited about working, like doing things on an entrepreneurial level. We just announced Global's first UK dates. We're not swinging for the fences. You know what I mean? We're starting slow. We're not going to run before we can walk. We're booking good venues, but they're not arenas. They're good sized venues, but they're not arenas. And I'm having a big part in. I'm actively involved in that, which I'm very excited about, and I'm really enjoying working on a sort of administrative level with the UK shows. So I want to do everything I can to make sure they're a success. And just looking out for for new opportunities, working with new people, and exploring the business on different levels. We've got Mickey and I have got the first Superstar seminar, which we're doing here in Richmond on August 8th and 9th. We've got Bill DeMott as our guest trainer who's taking this first seminar. It's a 2-day seminar, and we've had really good response to that. Like, places are filling up fast with a lot of enrollments. That's going to be something we continue to do, not just here in Richmond, but all over the world. So yeah, I'm just enjoying, branching out and adding some strings to my bow, some within wrestling and some outside of it.
That's great. Now, Nick, for anybody listening right now that may not follow you on social media or whatnot, can you let them know where to keep up with you these days?
Sure. Website is nickaldis.com, nickaldis.com, and you can email me for bookings, nick@nickaldis.com. My Twitter is still @MagnusOfficial. That's what it's going to stay that way for now. And my Instagram is @NickAldis. So they're my outlets you can get me at the moment.
Perfect. Nick, we really appreciate you coming on today. We wish you nothing but the best with the new book, and all the best to you in your future wrestling career. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for having me on.